Good evening and welcome to the breakdown. I'm Tara Setmayer. This is the Rick Wilson, and we are 6 whole days away from the end of this freaking election cycle, we all hope. Tonight, we have our special guest. I know you're happy that we're 6 days away, Rick. You guys have been working your asses off, so I heard that chuckle in there. Oh my
Yes.
gosh. More than half the number of votes cast during the entire 2016 presidential election have already been cast, and we are still 6 days away. That is amazing. Go democracy. We're very excited about all of this. And tonight we'll be joined by Pulitzer Prize winning science journalist Laurie Garrett, one of our foremost experts on global infectious diseases. I'm excited to talk to her. And later we'll talk to Lincoln Project's political director, Zack Czajkowski. And as always, we would like to bring you in on the discussion. So please send us your questions at #AskTheBreakdown on Twitter, #AskTheBreakdown. And no live callers tonight. Instead, we're going back to the old school voicemails. So please leave us a voicemail at 701-203-1208. And we will answer some of your questions later on in the show. And Zack tonight is going to be previewing this bot smashing party, which I'm excited to hear more about. I have no idea what that is. I'm over 40, so this sounds like a millennial thing. And Zack will be here to explain what the hell a bot smashing party actually is. So stay tuned for that. But before we get started, I just want to take a moment to send our thoughts and prayers. We're really thinking of our folks down there in southern Louisiana that are in the pathway of this Hurricane Zeta, another hurricane this season. And we just hope this will be the last and that everyone is staying safe. Man, this has really been a difficult hurricane season. So we're thinking of you guys down there in the path of Zeta. So, Rick, I heard someone wrote a book called Everything Trump Touches Dies. And look at it now.
Might have heard of that. Might have hit number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yes.
That shit will never get old, I assure you.
Ever. It is the greatest title, most apropos title to everything encompassing the shit show of the Trump campaign. I mean, of the Trump presidency, which has been a perpetual campaign for 4 years. The coronavirus is not just on the rise in this country. We're hitting records again. The overall response has been a disaster. We have deaths up at 15% from last week. 3 states set a single record. The United States is now reporting 71,813 new coronavirus cases per day, which is the highest 7-day rolling average since this whole thing started. That's not rounding the corner, my friend.
No, and it's certainly not, and it makes the White House's Science Policy Office statement even more risible when they come out and say that they have ended the COVID-19 pandemic as one of the accomplishments of this administration. I mean, there's a point where the gaslighting just becomes so overdrawn and so absurd that you really can't look at it with anything but shock and awe. But it is not going well. It is not turning out well. The numbers are rising again. The second wave is hitting us again, which makes it a perfect intro for our first guest. And I just wanted to say to everyone, since I read The Coming Plague by Laurie Garrett back in the late 90s, I guess, I was so impressed with the depth and granularity of her work on infectious diseases, which weirdly enough is kind of a hobby for me. And I'm not even kidding.
Is it really?
But I love reading about infectious diseases. Like there's a whole library section in my house of books about plagues.
We learned something new.
It's a cheerful thing, obviously.
Yeah, we learned something new about Rick Wilson tonight.
But Laurie is incredibly impressive. So with that, let's let Tara give the full introduction. But I just wanted to express my status as a Laurie Garrett fanboy before we begin.
That's amazing because there's not too many people that can say Rick Wilson is a fanboy of. So, Laurie Garrett, welcome to the show. We're happy to have you. As Rick mentioned, you're the author of The Coming Plague, Newly Emerging Diseases in a World Out of Balance, and Betrayal of Trust, The Collapse of Global Public Health. Um, I'm thrilled to have you too. I requested you tonight because I felt that of all of the people who cover what's going on, I find your reporting and your analysis of what's happening to be top notch. And you were one of the first people to really start to raise the red flag about there's something happening over here in China back in January. You were writing about this, and you wrote a piece about how Trump had sabotaged America's coronavirus response. What went wrong in those early days?
Well, first of all, thanks for letting me join you this evening. I'm a fan girl of you, so we're all in great sycophantic situation here.
I love that.
All right. Look, I first got word and became aware that there was a strange new outbreak going on in Wuhan before New Year's Eve. In fact, between Christmas and New Year's. If I knew it, and I don't have access to highly classified information, obviously the White House knew it. Obviously the NSC knew it, CIA, etc. And I first started tweeting, everybody pay attention, this is looking a lot like SARS. Having been in the SARS epidemic in China and knowing how the Chinese would respond, I felt I was reading all those classic sound bites that are, the disinformation state, saying it's really nothing to worry about, but we do have these strange pneumonias. But don't worry, it's all under control, but we do have these strange pneumonias. And so by January 7th, I was writing long pieces in Foreign Policy and other publications saying, everybody better pay attention. Here it is. This looks just like SARS at roughly the same time of year in 2003. And so, look, if I knew it, the administration knew it. And what did they do? Apparently, virtually nothing. Many of the top offices in the National Security Council, Homeland Security, and so on, were raising red flags. Folks down at CDC were talking to their counterparts in Beijing and saying, this is not looking good. And finding out that the Beijing CDC had not been allowed to go into Wuhan, had not been allowed to investigate in their own country, which is a big tip-off in China that something really deeply bad is going on, and they don't want Xi Jinping to know. They want to take care of the problem, cover it up before the big boss finds out. And basically the way our administration chose to respond was to say, Xi Jinping, he's my good friend. We have a great relationship. Photo of me hugging, says Trump. And he goes to Davos, to the World Economic Forum, palsy-walsies with Xi Jinping and tells the press corps, hey, he's got it under control. It's nothing to worry about. It's going to be gone in no time. And then Pompeo is instructed by the White House to send over some money to help the Chinese fight their epidemic. And they do so. Did he request at any of those time points, we want to send an investigative team into Wuhan? Open the doors to our CDC, let them in? No. Did he at any point say, we would really like some samples? Can you send us some tissue samples, some blood samples, so we can see what you're dealing with in these people? No. So today, for Trump to say the Chinese were covering up and they were lying and blah, 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 and call it the China virus or Kung flu or whatever, racist little phrase he's toying on any given day, is incredibly disingenuous, because at a point when there was still a certain amount of conversation going on directly between the two leaders, he just let it go. He didn't take advantage of it to insist on anything other than, hey, these guys are swell and they'll take care of the problem. Once it's clear that he's wrong and that shutting down the airplanes from China did not actually effectively shut down the flow of virus, and that indeed 40,000 people came from China to the United States after this, much hailed, aren't I great, I shut the flights down thing. Once it's clear that actually there are cases in the United States and they're scattered all over the place, then it becomes, we have to blame China, and we have to change the whole nature of the narrative, and we have to flip it to these guys infected us, and maybe they made it in a laboratory, maybe they manufactured it. We now know the person that's really been behind the whole claim that this virus was manufactured in the Wuhan Virology Institute was none other than Steve Bannon, and that he'd been, using his Breitbart facilities to create and conjure this mythology, even to the degree of bringing a doctoral student from China to the United States, putting her up and financing her income and everything to tell the alleged story of the alleged man-made virus. So as we look at that crucial period from mid-February through mid-March, a 4-week period in which every step taken by government, whether it was at the White House level or a gubernatorial level, wherever it might be, every step in those 4 weeks was critical to why we've ended up where we are now. And I could cite, chapter and verse, all the mistakes that were made, but I think people have largely seen these. They now know this. Probably the single biggest mistake was a failure to recognize that this was already a globalized infection. And as a result, even if you thought sealing off flights from China was going to stop at least one route of exposure, you were missing the fact that, hey, it's exploded in Europe, and here come cases from Italy and right into New York City. And we now know in multiple entries that there were, New York is a very popular tourist spot for Italian tourists in particular, and multiple entries occurred. We now know there were several different people infected all at once and seeding this epidemic that became the great explosion of March and April in New York.
Laurie, you just laid out some things that I don't think a lot of people realize. I don't think most people knew that Steve Bannon had a role in putting out this disinformation about the Wuhan virus being, created in a lab in China, and that, Steve Bannon, Rick Wilson's favorite evil genius over there, and that I don't think a lot of people realize that Trump really did not stop this or shut everything down. That's one of the things that he brags about constantly. And I just want to throw things at the TV when I hear him say that, because I know that, and those of us who follow this know that. The casual American who's just, trying to deal with coronavirus really doesn't understand that how badly Trump screwed this whole thing up in the beginning. And then I'm sure for you, when you heard the Woodward tapes, that Trump really actually did know. It was bad enough what he did at the time. You could possibly blame it on, well, I didn't want to hear it, or he had his head in the sand. But he knew how bad it was and still chose to do what he did, including sending tons of PPE to China at a time when we did not have PPE here in the US for our healthcare workers. Can you just talk a little bit about that, what happened in that time period where Trump, what our government was doing, what they should have been doing, but what they did instead with the Defense Production Act, and why were we so unprepared?
Well, one of the things that had been done very early in the Trump administration was the elimination of the Office of Pandemic Preparedness that was inside the National Security Council and its counterpart office inside the Department of Homeland Security. So the two action points that had been created in the Obama administration to not just siphon information and go through intel, but determine swift response outcomes had been eliminated. That meant that Trump was operating with whatever intel and information was coming to him in a random way, not in some targeted fashion that could constitute real policy advice. The other thing is that we are in that critical window the most important move, and I was saying this loudly at the time, the most important move we could have made was to say, well, we don't understand this virus yet, and we don't have a good test for it yet, but we do know one thing. It's taking advantage of nursing homes and assisted living centers. And the first big outbreak was that Kirkland, Washington retirement center. And that should have been a signal that we needed to do two things immediately. And they should have been CDC activities executed by order from the White House. And it was, number one, look for all excess death reports for pneumonia-like illnesses coming out of intensive care units nationwide. Flag them, leap in and investigate them. And number two, get inside of nursing homes and start figuring out how to protect those individuals, because the nursing homes are going to be like seed stock for massive community outbreaks. Neither was done. And then as we came to realize that, yes, jails and prisons were very similar in terms of being captive, packed personnel that ought to be tracked closely. We should be looking for any excess mortality, any cause excess mortality in that setting. We never did that. We still haven't done that. There still isn't an actual national repository of information about the death toll that's been unfolding in all our incarcerated population centers. There isn't a national database on nursing homes and assisted living centers, even though we know, these have been like fuel for the epidemic. They've been like throwing kindling on ashes and giving it a good hard blow to bring the fire up. And then we began to see the situation with meatpacking industry. And again, it's totally ignored. In fact, OSHA, as far as I know, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration has still never issued COVID-specific regulations or recommendations of any kind, because this government opposes regulation. This government opposes anything that interferes with the ability to make a profit. And so,
Laurie,
sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm sorry. So we have this failed response on the front end that becomes 2-3 months of basically it's going away propaganda, and it's the Chinese Wu flu, whatever the racist trope du jour was, and then we end up with this mismanagement on the front end where government doesn't want to take action because they don't want to crash the stock market. And then we end up in this moment where I think the sort of mid phase of this was just months of misinformation from the White House. How much of an impact do you think that has had on not only the first wave that hit us, but now this second wave that's hitting us now? That Donald Trump is like the singular most potent source of misinformation about the virus. How much of an effect do you think that's had?
Rick, it's been enormous. I actually just finished preparing a giant PowerPoint for a speech I'm giving tomorrow at a Zoom conference for however many thousands of people.
Aren't they all?
Yeah. And so I methodically went through week by week every set of Trump statements that turned out to be fallacious regarding COVID, and look for reaction, what it actually triggered in terms of human behavior. So you can see, for example, as soon as Trump starts talking about hydroxychloroquine and saying that, the FDA has to give it approval right away and it's a miracle cure and everybody would be fine with it, you can actually document that there was suddenly a surge in prescriptions written, not just by physicians treating COVID cases, but in every single subspecialty of medicine. So OBGYNs were writing hydroxychloroquine prescriptions. Cardiologists were, even podiatrists and dentists were. Everybody was suddenly trying to get hydroxy from their health provider because the president endorsed it. We now know, of course, it does absolutely no good whatsoever, and may even, for some people with cardiac conditions, be dangerous. You can go down the list and see, when he advocated, what about bleach, he says, and disinfectant? Maybe we do something with it, right? Well, and then you had people die because they drank bleach.
Yep.
Actually died because they drank bleach. And you saw a surge in the sales of key disinfectant products just flying off the shelves at your local, Costco and Kmart. And as you go down the list, every single time this man opens his mouth, lives are affected and even lost. So disinformation and misinformation is overwhelmingly coming from a single source. There was a big study done by folks at Cornell, and they basically figured out that 38% of all the disinformation floating around on the internet regarding COVID traces to the president.
Oh God, that's astounding to me. But it does speak to the scope of his the obsessiveness of his followers and the power of social media to be a vector for things that are completely wrong and idiotic about COVID, well, and many other things, but COVID in particular, and things like pandemic being out there for weeks on end, and Trump folks amplifying it and boosting it over and over again, and every fight over hydroxychloroquine in the last 9 months, ends up it ends up drilling back to some Facebook group where they say, my cousin's brother's friend used hydroxychloroquine and it cured him of COVID.
Yep.
It's always a.
But it's really interesting, Rick, if you look at the the political pressure that the Trump administration has put on the FDA to rapidly approve various things, allegedly as cures or what have you for COVID.
Mm-hmm.
When it came time and the president was sick, he didn't take any of it. He was pushing hard for convalescent therapy, right? Convalescent plasma therapy. He called the FDA the deep state, saying they're blocking this, great treatment and so on. He didn't take it when he came down with COVID. And you look at hydroxychloroquine, he didn't take it when he actually had COVID. And the whole list, everything he ever advocated or retweeted from God knows whom, that's not what he ended up taking when his life was on the line.
You know what, Laurie, I wanted to ask you about that because what he allegedly ended up taking, we really can't believe half of what they say, was remdesivir, was part of his alleged cocktail of medications. And you tweeted today about this new study about remdesivir having no benefit and the type of money that may have been made from this. Can you talk a little bit about what the controversy now over remdesivir?
Yeah, remdesivir is actually a drug that was kind of like a patented formula in search of a purpose. It had been developed for other reasons. It was sitting on the shelf at Gilead Pharmaceuticals, and they really didn't have a market for it. And then it was tried out against COVID. And some of the studies done by the companies initially indicated it might be cutting a day or two off of your hospitalization time. In that way, it would be similar to Tamiflu, which if you take it in the first 24 hours after you get infected with the flu virus, may shorten your length of illness by about a half a day. That's it. And it's a very expensive drug to get a half a day benefit from. Well, remdesivir it's a similar thing. If it has effect at all, it's when you take it before you even have symptoms. And very few people are inclined to go searching for a medicine when they don't even know they're infected. And the initial claims, it's still technically in clinical trials. The initial claims were far greater benefit, 2-3 days shaved off hospitalization and so on. But a massive, I believe it was 161 nation survey of remdesivir uses facilitated by the World Health Organization showed no benefit whatsoever. And on the other flip side of that is a real negative side effect of that drug, which is that a 5-day course of treatment costs $3,100. So if you don't have insurance, if you don't have health insurance, and you seek healthcare and they put you on that drug and you think, wow, that's great. I just get my infusions of remdesivir and I'll be all set. Well, it's not clear it helped you, but it probably made it impossible for you to pay this month's mortgage.
Can I ask you about the Great Barrington Declaration? This whole idea of herd immunity that this White House is pushing out there now, since they seem to. My good friend Paul Begala wrote a piece saying that the final message from the Trump campaign is America drop dead. And this idea of herd immunity, this Great Barrington Declaration that's out there, how fringe is this? You're in tune with the scientific community on this, the health community on this. How fringe is this really?
Well, it's very fringe. I mean, it comes from a kind of libertarian element within the scientific community. The three scientists who started this whole mess, one from Harvard, one from Stanford, one from Oxford, they certainly have the institutional gravitas. But the individual from Stanford had previously been involved in a study thoroughly discredited that came out in March or April, claiming a huge background infection rate for COVID in Santa Clara County. And it turned out that basically his wife and one of his colleagues' wives had gone out and recruited their family and friends to come in and have COVID tests. And then said, see, nobody gets really sick. None of these people were hospitalized, so it's really not a big deal. And it turned out to be a completely fraudulent study and discredited and withdrawn from publication. But he has continued to push that line, along with a colleague in the UK who's played a big role in convincing Boris Johnson that the herd immunity approach ought to be the UK's tactic. And the bottom line here is there is no country in the world, if you look at the planetary distribution of cases of known infection per 100,000 population, there is no country in the world that is anywhere close to achieving anything we might call herd immunity. And even Sweden, which is in the most concerted way gone for something akin to a herd immunity strategy, has not even begun to get close. And we also are having increasing, though conflicting evidence that over time, people with mild or asymptomatic infections lose their immunity. It's not something that is a lifelong protection. It's not like if you were a child and you had measles and you're basically immunized by your experience of surviving measles against future exposures to the virus. This is not like
according to Trump. Trump's immune, right, Rick?
That's what he says.
Well, he's immune to the truth.
Well, Laurie,
That's true.
For certain. Well, Laurie, thank you so very, very much for joining us tonight. We deeply appreciate it. This was a very enlightening and smart segment, and I'm sure our audience is both enlightened and terrified now of how deep this rabbit hole we're in is right now. And I just want to roll out of this interview showing an ad that we made about Jared Kushner and the decisions he made on March 21st, which, by the way, led to the famous billboards now in Times Square that he's very unhappy about. But again, Laurie, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time and your wisdom, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurie.
So with that, let's roll evil.
Evil is real. We ignore it when it seems educated, polite, superficially charming, even sophisticated. We trivialize it, ignore it, and when we do, it grows. On March 31st in the Trump White House, Trump's COVID team led by Jared Kushner decided to ignore testing in states with Democratic governors. Evil was in that room. Oh, it looked like any other bureaucratic meeting. There were PowerPoints, spreadsheets, briefings, and estimates of the dead. It was that meeting that led to Trump policies that would kill more Americans than Pearl Harbor, Vietnam, and 9/11. More Americans than World War I. It was deliberate, cold, political, premeditated. Some people say Trump and Kushner were incompetent when it came to COVID, but let's call it what it is.
It is what it is.
Evil.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
That's so good. That
was a fairly subtle ad.
Subtlety is not in our middle name, that is for sure.
No, it is not our wheelhouse right now.
One adjective I think you could have added there was effeminate evil. Um,
Could have.
could have. Laurie, we could have talked to her for the whole hour. I mean, she's so extraordinary.
Oh, gosh, absolutely.
I mean, there's so many things that this administration has done that has just royally screwed up this response, and just so many things that are going on that have led to some of the preventable things that we're going through right now. And yet Donald Trump is still running around the country, putting on these super spreader freaking events. We're now finding out that we can trace some of these clusters of COVID cases directly to Trump rallies. Nearly 24 cases in Minnesota, traced to 3 campaign events, additional outbreaks in rallies in Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada. Today in Arizona, Trump is still bragging about we've turned the corner. And then we hear about this nonsense with Jared Kushner and the Woodward tapes that came out. I think we should roll Meanwhile now and take a listen to the recap of what we've missed.
Let's have a little Meanwhile.
Let's have a little Meanwhile.
I will die for that man happily.
Meanwhile, from Trump's flailing campaign,
Jared Kushner talked to Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Bob Woodward back in April.
Trump's now back in charge. It's not the doctors.
They wanted to sideline the doctors. They had one concern: Election Day.
With COVID cases shooting up across the country, the markets nosedived today.
All of October's gains washed away in a sea of red.
And what Trump's been able to do is, I say he's basically did a full hostile takeover of the Republican Party.
When you wash your hands, it takes you 5 times longer. You know, the water's not coming. You got soap, you can't get it up.
The most dangerous people around the president are overconfident idiots.
In a Fox News interview yesterday morning, senior White House advisor Jared Kushner criticized protesters who mobilized after the killing of George Floyd.
You know, you saw a lot of people who are just virtue signaling. They go on Instagram and cry. President Trump's policies are the policies that can help people break out of the problems that they're complaining about, but he can't want them to be successful more than they want to be successful.
So I guess that's why they don't let him talk in front of cameras much?
I told Jared to speak to you, and I believe he has. Very capable guy, Jared. You can't get people like this.
We talked once.
One smart cookie.
One smart cookie.
One smart cookie, my ass. It's one dumbass talking about another dumbass that has led us to 227,000 dead Americans. One smart cookie. Let's check out.
Yeah, let me tell you, the revisiting the Jared thing for 1 second.
Yeah.
If they really want to sue us over those billboards, the discovery is going to be delicious. It will never end. We will drag him until the end of time. Those Woodward tapes are utterly damning, as they tended to be with everyone in this administration. But you're right. This guy. I mean, the Trump thinks that Jared is smart, and that tells you everything you need to know about Trump's own intelligence.
Exactly. Good grief. He put this guy in charge of peace in the Middle East. Jeez. Let's check in with our bot smashing party. We'll see what's happening over there.
Yes. What are our bot smashers doing?
What's happening?
Hold on.
Oh, got it. Oh, that's where. Okay, that's my fault. So we're coming up with the Zoom room with that, but there's where you can join into that party. That's the Zoom meeting where you can take part in the Russian troll stomping action that's going on right now. So that was my miscommunication. But that's where you can go if you want to see what's happening, and then we'll talk about it in a little bit with Zach. If you want to join in with what's going on there or with us. Rick, what happened at the Oklahoma event with Trump last night?
It's one thing for the president to expose his followers and devotees to a deadly disease, especially that has a higher chance of killing the ones that tend to go to these rallies. It's another thing to leave them freezing in the dark. The rally in Oklahoma was such a shit show from the start that they pushed these people out from these remote parking lots miles away from the event. And then when the event wrapped up, Trump hopped in the helicopter. He was out, gone, boom, bang. But Those folks had to walk back in the cold, in the dark. It ended up with 9 people being hospitalized. It was one of the most absurd things. They just didn't pay for the buses on the back end. This is either a sign of total collapse and disorganization, total indifference, or some delicious combination thereof.
Omaha.
It's a cocktail of incompetence.
It was Omaha. I said Oklahoma.
Omaha,
Nebraska.
Me. In the Nebraska-Stani province of, yes, correct.
Which is ridiculous that he's even going there in these final days, but they're trying to go after that one electoral vote in that district in Nebraska, where, by the way, Trump is down 7 points to Biden, which should tell you a lot about what potentially could happen.
Yeah, Tara, you're absolutely right. They're trying to pick and choose and put together any small bump anywhere they can get it. The state polls are breaking farther and farther. Look, there's an analogy here that people haven't really contemplated, and none of us were really politically active during this window. But in 1980, Jimmy Carter's campaign, at the very last week, collapsed about 11 or 12 points. And it led to Ronald Reagan winning a smashing electoral college victory and a smashing national victory. We are starting to see numbers that are very similar to that. These are numbers now where they're well outside the margins in places like Wisconsin and Michigan and Minnesota and Iowa. We are seeing the Senate races in complete collapse in places like Iowa, Maine, Colorado, Arizona. So we are looking at a wave election building, and that collapse happens quickly. You know, it's like Ernest Hemingway said of bankruptcy. It happens slowly and then all at once. Well, what's happening right now is we're on the cusp, and depending on how much people remain motivated to vote in the next 5 days, we're still early voting going on, folks, in a lot of places till Saturday. I'd get out and do it if I were you. That early vote can still be a dispositive factor in wrecking Donald Trump's shit. And we are looking right now at the possibility of a 1980-style wipeout. We are looking at a slightly more remote but very real possibility of a 1964-style wipeout. And those things will spell a repudiation of Donald Trump, either one of those, or a repudiation of Trump that we really need in this country. And I think that it's important to keep up that momentum and energy for the next 5 days, folks. I'm going to do it every night we're on the set. Speaking of being on the set, before we introduce our guest, I want to say that he and I are sitting next to each other not wearing masks because earlier today and seemingly every other damn day, we have a swab shoved up our nose and we are tested for COVID. We live in a COVID bubble. We all stay together. We don't circulate outside of that bubble. And at some point, they'll have a vaccine for this, but we will always remember how elbow to elbow we've been in our bubble for these many months. So with that, Tara, I will flip it back to you.
Yes. By the way, you're not the only one who thinks it's going to be a wave election or a potential landslide. So does Ted Cruz and some others who are warning against this, quote, bloodbath that could be coming. So it ain't just us, folks.
Too late.
That's right. Let's segue into our first guest, our LP guest tonight. I know we have a segue.
The graphics guys are really...
They're killing it. That's the best yet, guys.
Yes. They all deserve raises. Oh my gosh. Welcome to our friend, Zack Czajkowski. He is the Lincoln Project political director. Zack, it's so good to have you.
Thank you all so much for having me.
Oh.
Zack, welcome, man.
It's a pleasure to be here. And, you know, I noticed y'all were talking about Jared Kushner. I just wanted to relay the words of one of his former classmates. They were asked, you know, what's the deal with Jared? Is he smart or not? And the only response was dumber than the hockey players. So I think those are the people that know him best. And I think it applies. Yeah.
Wow.
Damn. Fatality.
Oh my gosh. Well,
so
for another thing about Jared Kushner, if you want to learn about him, his family, and his wretched upbringing and all those people, read Vicky Ward's book, Kushner Inc. It is really, really comprehensive. There's our billboard that they're so upset about. And if you just want to know why he's the way he is and where he comes from, her book is a comprehensive authority on it. It's very good. Vicky Ward, shout out to her. Zack, can you please explain to us what is happening with this bot room thing because I am clueless about this. I already screwed it up once. So please help me and everybody else out. What are we doing and why are we smashing Russian bot trolls?
Absolutely. So for the past several years, we've seen a ton of Russian bots sowing misinformation across our country, and not just our country, but about 16 or 17 other ones. And the Trump administration, of course, has done very little to stop any kind of Russian meddling. So we are trying to bring together the best of America and crowdsource a solution. So we've got about 50, or had about 50 volunteers, I think it's a little more now, who have been trained on how to identify bots, block them, and remove them. And the reason we do this is simple. The bots share these things, and then real people, we've all got that relative, that friend from high school, that guy down the street who's kind of weird, who's posting 30 things a day, and it's all nonsense. They're not getting that, by going out and finding it. It's popping into their algorithms on Facebook, on YouTube, even on Twitter sometimes. And so we want to do everything we can to stop the flow of misinformation, and that's what the training is all about. That's what these folks are doing, and we could not be more proud of them and the work that they're putting in to make sure we have a free and fair election.
That's great.
Yeah, Zach, it's one of those things that we've gotten enormous feedback about at the Lincoln Project of motivating voters, especially in this COVID era where people are doing all this from home, both our outreach stuff and this part of the equation, where the number of people in the Internet Research Agency is not unlimited. This is still a manageable problem when you apply the resources of really smart volunteers and great training and the toolbox that you guys have started to develop. I mean, do you think this thing can scale higher than this? I mean, we can sort of have a counterforce against that.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about the raw numbers, it's anywhere from 15,000 to 30,000 paid Russian trolls, and that's a lot of people. But we've already trained over 1,000 folks on this. I think we're going to train 1,000 more in the next couple days. This is something that should continue not just through the election, but long afterwards, because at the end of the day, win or lose for Joe Biden, the Russian meddling is going to continue, and we can be part of that solution. It's something you can do for 1 minute, you can do it for an hour, you can do it for a day straight if you feel like it. I know when I have a hard time sleeping now, it's actually very relaxing and very satisfying to go in and do some troll hunting late at night. And Tara, I think you're new to this, but you're gonna love this. I'm telling you, it's the best.
Tara's got an edge on her; she'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'll do it for it to be cathartic or not. I think that you've been in the bubble way too long, Zach. That's as bad as me watching
Not
Sunday
untrue.
football. I'm saying that's as bad as me watching Sunday football games on regional channels around the country so I can watch the campaign ads that go on. It's something that's fun. So I get it. I totally get it. What happens when you're like totally immersed in this. I'm glad that we're doing this because this is really an important aspect of what's happening because so many people are involved in social media and this is a real thing. I'm hoping we can try to get Clint Watts on, who's a former FBI agent who's doing incredible work with his team on Russian disinformation, identifying the networks, the mechanisms by which they use social media and right-wing news outlets to put out this propaganda, this disinformation, from OANN to Just the News and John Solomon and the New York Post and Fox News. Like the network is unbelievable. So that's just another aspect of what's happening, all the way down to the trolls and what they use and how Russia does this differently than the way that China and Iran are doing it. They don't have these kinds of human assets that are doing this the way that the Russians do, the way they're invested in it. So hats off to you guys and another part of what the Lincoln Project is doing to kind of stick it to them. It's great.
One of the scariest things, I think one misconception about misinformation is that not all the videos that are boosted are created by the Russian trolls. So in our work doing this, we found that Russian trolls live on the Blaze, for example, Glenn Beck's site.
Yep.
They amplify all of their stuff. And so it's not just Russian misinformation. It's that there is the alt-right media that is benefiting from it directly. It's boosting their revenues. They have more money to put out more stuff. It's boosting their engagement because of the way that it tweaks the algorithms when trolls take hold of something. So it's not just these fake videos or deep fakes. It's real content made by American news companies that is highly misleading and amplified further. So it's really insidious, and I'm so proud of the team, and we couldn't be more happy with Bill and Adam from Own the Room who put this together. It's phenomenal stuff, and I would encourage everybody who's watching between now and the election to at least stop one troll. It's going to be more fun than you think. We've actually got a great website where we've gamified things a little bit for folks.
And let's bring up the Zoom room one more time for you guys to look at, so you can jump into that if you want to have a look and get engaged with this, because these guys are having this. These guys are doing one of those things where it's fun, and at the same time it's virtuous, and you're making a difference in pushing back against one of the things that's one of the most corrosive and dangerous aspects of this information warfare that Vladimir Putin's team is waging on this country.
Can we just give a big round of applause to everybody in the Zoom room who's working hard to stop these trolls?
Go get them, y'all.
All right, guys.
All you guys in the Zoom room, appreciate you. Keep at it. Keep at it.
It takes a village.
I love that.
That's so
I love
fun.
it.
We were having a blast before.
I love it. Yeah, I dropped in there a few minutes before the show, folks. These guys are engaged. They are excited. This is citizen activism in the modern era at its very, very best. And I'm so proud that we've got this thing going. Zach, you guys have done a tremendous, tremendous job of launching this. And we're going to keep this going. This is going to be one of the things. Look, the Lincoln Project Super PAC is going to go forward from here. We've got a lot of battles yet to fight, both in 2022, both in 2024, and on from there, to try to push back against this tide of authoritarian statism and nationalist populism that's being fueled by things like these troll armies, by things like these bots. So this is going to go forward, folks. If you want to get involved in this, you could be doing this. It doesn't take a lot of time, as Zach said, but it's an absolutely virtuous activity. And we're so proud it's going this well.
And it's extra important in the home stretch because with the new creative blackout on Google and Facebook, organic posts are even more significant and can have an even greater impact. So it's critical that we are pushing back against misinformation. So please do sign up. And thank you so much to everybody who's on the troll hunting training right now. Thank you for everything you guys do. And Bill and Adam, y'all have put together an incredible program. So we appreciate it.
Really terrific.
Yeah, job well done. Before we take our first call tonight, Zach, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, or Rick, either one of you, about, Rick, I know how much you love Facebook, so maybe you can talk about this too. Rick hates Facebook, by the way. I mean, he despises them, thinks Facebook should be raised and the earth should be salted over. Like, he's totally off Facebook, and I get it. And just kind of why I'm bringing it up now, because of, to Zach's point, I mean, we have these ads that are going up on Facebook. The Trump campaign was putting up misinformation, telling people, oh, election day is today. And, putting up, oh, you make sure, do this by October 27th. Like, they're just putting up all this crap on Facebook, and it gets through, and people don't know that this is disinformation. Like, what is happening with Facebook? I thought they were blacking this out. You referred to it, but I thought there wasn't supposed to be any of this allowed in the last week. Like, what is happening?
So I think it's safe to say that between now and the election, Trump is going to say at least one or two kind of outlandish things. Is that a safe bet? Yeah.
I'm thinking more like by the time Air Force One lands tonight for whatever super spreader event he was at.
Right. So, we can make a new ad about whatever that crazy thing may be, but we couldn't put money behind it on Facebook. So the new creative blackout means that they made these ads in advance, and then they can put more money behind them. They can't, I believe they cannot change the audience, but they can put more money behind it. So these are preemptive ads. But some of the content that they put out preemptively is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, like Trump
there's
won.
an old saying about campaign Yeah. There's an old saying about campaign finance that it's like rain on a sidewalk. All the cracks are going to get found. I think that's how the Trump campaign is approaching what Facebook is doing here, because this is so new and it's so different that nobody really knows what the rules are, and we're all trying to figure it out together. And of course, the Trump campaign is much more comfortable with legal, moral, and ethical gray than anybody else.
If they can find a way to cheat, they will, just like they did the first time around. And Facebook was a major player in that. Good grief, man. I can't wait for this whole thing to be over. Let's take our first caller tonight. I think we've got a voicemail. What have we got?
Hi, my name is Kimberly, and I am a voter from California. I have a question about recovery after the election. What kind of support system is there going to be for fellow Republican voters who, like myself, have come to terms with feeling duped by the party, feeling like the party left me, And there's been a stage of almost embarrassment coming to terms with that and then admitting it. And I'm sure some psychologists have some, series of phases that I've gone through and then, reclaiming my identity as an independent voter. So anyway, what kind of system is set up for people like me who have gone through this process and, are almost embarrassed and ashamed? Thank you.
Well, that is a fantastic question, and it is something a lot of people have been really thinking about, because the Republican Party, as it is constituted today, has become, part of the Trump personality cult. And it's really hard for people to reconcile the things they thought were the fundamental tenets of the party over time. So my suggestion is this: stay involved in politics. Think about the sort of things that motivate you ideologically, the things you believe in, the things that have been a part of why you were a Republican at one point, and see if you can find people to relate to politically and otherwise who believe in those things. Because I don't think the Republican Party can be rebuilt in the wake of Trumpism without a meaningful reform, a shock to the system. But that is such a great question. I really thank you for asking it, and we wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
And also, you can come join us at the Lincoln Project or RVAT.
Well, there's that.
Up Republic. I mean, there's a bunch of groups out there that we're all, simpatico in this effort, and we've all been there where this caller was or has been, and we've all been there. So you're not alone, but you have a community where you are welcomed, so we can all go through this grieving process together and move forward and help rebuild from the ground up. Because to Rick's point, we have to burn this whole thing down. It's the only way that things can change and rebuild it, because it cannot stay the way it's going. It's unsustainable, and the party will go the way of the Whigs otherwise. So I think we have a tweet next.
A tweet.
How do I sign up to train for troll hunting?
That's for you, Zach.
For you, Zach.
What a great question. So one of the easiest ways to find out about when we're doing more trainings is by joining one of our Lincoln Project Facebook groups. We provide updates and action items every day, so you're going to see an awful lot of posts about when we're doing these trainings. You can also follow the main account on Twitter, myself, Rick, Tara. We're going to be tweeting out more of these trainings, but the Facebook groups are the best place to go. We have state-specific groups, we have constituency-specific groups, and then we have a catch-all, which is CREW, the Community Rapid Engagement Wing, which our incredible East Coast political director, Jacob Palay, put together. Jump on in there. We would love to have more folks involved, and this is also a great way to find a sense of community, meet like-minded folks who feel like yourselves.
I also sense that there should be some gear with this, like Troll Hunter. Seriously, like we should do a Lincoln Project hat or a shirt or something that says Troll Hunter, the Lincoln Project.
We got it.
We're on it.
Wait, somebody call us.
If the king of gear,
we're gonna
get Philip in here.
I'm sending the gear guy a message right now, folks.
I want one.
I live in the same house as Philip, so
there
this
you
will be
go.
easy.
I will sport a Troll Hunter hat or hoodie, like as soon as we get them. I think that's
Can I
an
do
awesome
something
idea.
crazy?
Do something crazy. Go for it.
Why don't people should tweet at us with the gear they'd like to see
Yes.
around Troll Hunters? Let's get the
LP,
Lincoln Project supporters
folks,
involved.
Here's the hashtag: LP Troll Gear. Okay, LP Troll Gear.
Give us your
hashtag
ideas.
it. Let us know what you want to see. Give us your ideas. We'll crowdsource it.
Yeah. All right. Let's bring up another.
And I've let the gear guy know there's incoming work.
Yes.
Poor Philip.
Poor Phil.
Poor Philip.
We will get this out quickly, but there's no world in which these are arriving before election day.
Guys,
So
we're not gonna
apologies
come
in
before
advance.
election day, but
that's okay.
This will be an ongoing project.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah, believe me, the trolls will be out between election day and inauguration, so the troll hunting services will be needed. LP troll hunters. I love it. What do we got next?
More questions? We got more,
Yeah,
more
we
questions?
do.
Hi,
There we
my
go.
name's Candace.
Do we have
I'm calling from
Okay.
Orlando,
Yes.
Florida. I voted already. And my question is, do you think Donald Trump believes himself when he says he's done more for the African American community than any other president?
No.
And thanks for what you guys are doing. Go Biden.
I'll take that one, being the resident person of color on
Alrighty.
this panel. Yes, Candace, he does believe it. He believes it because he's been told that, and he looks down his nose at people of color. He has his entire career, and he's surrounded himself with people who also tell him this bullshit. Like Jared Kushner. If you heard what Jared Kushner said this week on Fox and Friends about how, the Trump administration has put out policies to help people be successful, but we can't make them want it more than they do. I mean, it couldn't have been any more condescending. So yes, Donald Trump believes a lot of the bullshit he says because that's the way he justifies it and rationalizes it in his own mind. So if you want to understand more about how he operates and why, I suggest you read Mary Trump's book because she breaks it all down and you'll understand completely why he does this. Yeah.
She sure does. Okay, we've got another voicemail, I think, or a tweet.
I think we have, yeah.
My question is, do you think that Trump has been able to at all increase the number of people who were for him from 216 to 220? And on the other hand, is it possible that there are more Trump voters in his demographic that have registered, as we are seeing in certain states, that could still pull a rabbit out of the Electoral College hat? Thank you.
Zach?
That's a great...
Yeah, Zach, why don't you take that on?
Yeah, Zach?
It's a great question. I think fundamentally the fact that Donald Trump and his campaign want fewer people to vote, not more, would suggest to me that they have done quite the opposite. If you look at his numbers with independents in 2016, he won independents. There has not been a poll in 4 years showing him ahead with independents. Truly, I think he has done everything in his power to alienate the middle and the center left. So it is a pure base play and a suppression play with Democrats and moderate voters. So no, and I think it goes back to that great Reagan ad, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Even Donald Trump can't say he's better off than he was 4 years ago.
No.
I mean,
That's right.
is.
To that, just real quick,
point,
real quick, Rick, before I lose the thought, to that thing about Reagan's ad, are you better off 4 years ago? I listen to a lot of Sirius XM radio during the day because I'm always doing something. And there's a Biden radio ad out right now that is targeting the African-American community with that very language. Trump tells us that we're, what the hell do we have to lose? Well, damn near everything is what they say in that ad. And it says, Black America, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? So even the Biden campaign recognizes that that's good messaging, and particularly for the Black community. The whole country. It relates to the whole country, but they are using that for the Black community to try to push back against this. I've done more for Black folks than anybody else. So go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, but no, you're exactly right, Tara. And the point that Zach made and that you made, it comes down to this. Donald Trump has never wanted to expand the number. He wants to maximize turnout among his core. He wants to turn up the vote performance in his core and suppress other votes outside of that core. The problem with that is, as our friend Steve Schmidt says, is that core is like a white star and it's shrinking and collapsing on itself. It gets hotter, it gets crazier, it gets more intense, but it does not expand. It does not get you into a place where you're going to add to your coalition. There are no new people in the Trump coalition.
No.
That's just it. He's not going to come out of this with, as they were bragging earlier in the thing in a sort of hallucinatory way, we're going to get 50% of the Hispanic vote.
Yeah.
We're going to get 30% of the African American vote. Good luck.
And there's this notion that there are these kind of quiet Trump supporters out there that don't want to admit it. And to that, I would say, have y'all met many Trump supporters? I mean, they are some of the loudest, very quick to let you know that they are all about Donald Trump and very folks that there are. I think it's just
the shy Trump voter, like the shy Tory in UK political fame, is somewhat of an elusive creature these days, especially because Trumpism requires you to display a certain performative amount of energy and outward devotion to Trump, because those folks that are the true believers, they don't want the people to go, I sort of like you sometimes. That's like, how dare you, traitor?
Yeah.
That's a good point, Rick. It's true. There is a performative aspect to being a Trump supporter that doesn't square with being meek and quiet and shy. It's incongruent. All right.
Correct.
We have
correct.
one last tweet, yes?
One last tweet.
Hi from Australia. There is unprecedented interest and involvement in the U.S. election. Trump has damaged the USA's reputation worldwide. What does Biden need to do to fix it? And what happens if Trump wins again? Well, what Biden needs to do to fix it is win. Okay, by Biden winning alone, that will help repair some of the reputational damage done to this country because, people will recognize that, oh, okay, Americans are serious again because they know that Joe Biden is a serious person and experienced, and they're familiar with him because he was the vice president for 8 years. Right. So that's one major way that things can begin down the path of some sanity. And what happens if Trump wins again? God help us. I'll let you guys weigh in on that.
I'll say this. I think it's important that the U.S. begin to reclaim its role in the world as a reliable ally, as a country that is going to be both respectful of and respected by various people around the world, Australia included. We've had a very long positive relationship with Australia, but as with everything else, Trump has strained all of this to the breaking point. And he's engaged in a politics in Europe in particular that has reduced the power and the stability of NATO to the point where it's like Vladimir Putin's spank bank, how excited he is about Trump wrecking NATO and Article 5 and everything else. I broke Jake.
Sorry. I'm trying to keep a straight. Putin's spank bank.
Another Rick Wilsonism.
Victory.
We should start.
I called him Daddy Vladdy on Twitter.
We got to start a rolling list of Rick Wilsonisms.
Someday.
What happens if he gets reelected? God forbid.
God forbid.
It's something that it impacts so much more than just us. I mean, like I said earlier, there are 17 other countries that are experiencing misinformation being sown by Russia, Iran, China, Saudi Arabia. They will only be emboldened. And so the goal of Russia is chaos. That's why they want Trump to get reelected, or they want the election to be contested. And so I think that's the real fear, is that we are at risk of losing our democracy. And internationally, we are going to see more of the kind of behavior that's led us to this moment. And that is really, really frightening. It's why it's so important that we not just defeat Donald Trump, but that we defeat him decisively, and that we defeat Trumpism and show that it's not a viable political ideology if you want to get elected in the United States.
That's right, because our enemies will recognize the power
vacuum. That's why we're sticking around, folks.
And our enemies will recognize the power vacuum if Trump wins again, because the isolationism that he has begun will only get worse. And we see these right-wing populism movements emerging in other places. In Europe, you look at what's happening in Lithuania now, and what happened in Hungary. There's a lot to be concerned about when the United States is not leading the forefront as the shining city on the hill, being the beacon for democracy, human rights, all of these things. China, Russia, Iran, the access of evil there they will fill the void. And that's a scary world, and we're trying to fight against that to make sure that does not happen. All right, Rick, I think you've got one last one.
You got one last one, do we? All right. If an advanced society from another planet is actively flying their aircraft in Earth's atmosphere, kidnapping Earth children to experiment on them, and our military knows about its existence and is covering up, should Biden, if elected, disclose it all? No, Biden should open the interdimensional portal to the alien homeworld, send Donald Trump there and all Trump family members, push them through that portal, close it, problem solved.
You were so ready with that answer.
Right away. They tried to prank me with that tweet. They tried to get me, but you cannot get me on interdimensional alien space travel. You just can't.
It's another hobby.
Coming up soon on LPTV, Wilson and Schmidt talk Bigfoot, UFOs, and Evel Knievel.
Airing at 3 a.m.
That's right. Who was it? Art Bell? Who was the guy that used to do it at night, like overnight?
Art Bell.
Art Bell, right?
Art Bell. Coast to Coast America with Art Bell.
Coast to Coast America with Schmidt and Wilson.
We're buying the trademark.
Oh my gosh. Oh, well, I think we should end it on that note. Let's wrap it up. Big thank you to Zach. thank you, our political director, and all the intrepid work you guys are doing. You guys are kicking ass and taking names, and we love you guys for it. Big thank you to Laurie Garrett for joining us. Follow her and her work on Twitter and buy her books if you want to be scared shitless about what's happening with pandemics, or be a Rick Wilson fan like he is with her writings. Check her books out. There's another shout out to our group there, our Zoom room, our LP troll hunters. Yes. Shout out to them.
You guys are the best.
Go get them.
Fantastic. Just when you think Lincoln Project couldn't be any more awesome, we come out with troll hunting. Amazing. And of course, I want to do our call
best
to action tonight. Our See Something, Say Something initiative. We cannot be more emphatic about the importance of making sure the integrity of our elections is protected. CSAY 2020. Go to the website if you want to report any instances of voter suppression. They will catalog the time that you have observed it and investigate it. So hopefully you'll never need it, but in case you do, CSAY 2020. Rick?
Folks, you can also join us every day at 2:30 East Coast time with our good friend Jennifer Horn, who hosts Vote for America. This is a great show every day. We've had some fantastic guests on there, including Kate Hudson and others, talking about getting out the vote, talking about the issues that are facing us right now. Every day, 2:30 East Coast, 11:30 Pacific. And we look forward to seeing you again here on LPTV tomorrow night. We're going to go out with a clip from our podcast, hosted by the amazing Ron Steslow.
But not before we preview that tomorrow night we have the great George Conway joining us again. And Mike Madrid will be here along with Ron Brownstein, my colleague over at CNN. He's one of the best in the business.
That's a great panel.
Yes, so Mike Madrid and Ron Brownstein will be here to talk state of the race. And I believe Zack is coming back as well. So we'll see you tomorrow night. Check out the podcast.
I am?
All right, man.
Okay.
You're who you are.
Thanks, guys.
Do it. Oh, yeah.
Great.
You know, sometimes we say it was a man-made
Good night,
disaster,
folks.
but we're talking about how like it was of human construction. This is a man-made disaster, and there's one man responsible, right? I mean, when Joe Biden takes the oath of office, we will probably be reaching the peak of this wave, right? It's not going to get better probably before then.
Knock them all up.
Donald Trump has been inciting audiences for decades.
When you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people.
Now, for the first time, all of his hits have been collected in one place.
It's a rigged election. It's the only way we're going to lose.
Donco Records presents the inspirational favorites of Donald J. Trump. 45 hits from 45 himself.
We're rounding the turn, and we are coming around. It's going away anyway. We're rounding that curve.
With unforgettable favorites like...
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. I can do anything.
I can't release tax returns when there's an audit.
They're under audit. They have been for a long time.
We're under audit.
Under audit. You'll see it as soon as it's finished.
Get Donald J. Trump's race baiting on 12 CDRs, 45 records, or 128 singles.
Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Hussein Obama. I'm the least racist person in this room.
You'll cherish this corpus of babbling rage forever.
COVID, 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 COVID.
But wait, there's more. Order now and you'll receive Donald Trump Sings the Songs of Love. Absolutely free as our gift to you.
Just received a beautiful letter from Kim Jong-un, and then we fell in love. Okay? No, really. I'll kiss the guys and the beautiful women and the suburban women. Will you please like me?
So please, call now for Donald Trump's inspirational favorites. Or send $45.98 for 12 CDRs in cracked slimline cases. To order, call 201-305-9163. That's 201-305-9163.
It sounds like a fairy tale. A man comes down from his tower and is crowned the most powerful man on earth. He gives to the rich and takes from the poor. He makes friends with our enemies and enemies of our friends. And then one day, a disease came upon the land. Fear not, he says, for it is a hoax and will not harm those who believe in me. As thousands and thousands suffer and die, he lies and says all will disappear with a sip of his magic potion. When the people cry for help, he attacks them with noxious gases and forces the children out of their homes and into the plague-filled air of a once proud and healthy nation. We're living in a story as grim as any ever told. And the lesson? Vote and send the man back to his tower for good.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Just watching my algorithms get crushed. I guess I did something to piss off the Instagram gods, so hopefully you're seeing this stuff anyway. We'll do what we can. Talk to you soon.
What does a vampire say to Donald Trump?
I don't know.
You suck!